How many talks start with Madame Blavatsky, HPB? She writes of the immutable law of nature that is eternal motion, cyclic and spiral. She also tells us that Theosophical, the living power that initiates and sustains manifestation, traces spiral lines, and that this refers to the evolution of man's as well as nature's principles. She actually says that Theosophical comes in Ogdoad, which is like an infinity sign. So if you just imagine that, it's amazing thought. I just love that word, Ogdoad. All the different areas of nature are characterised by cyclic rhythms. Each cycle is itself complete, but there is also an upward movement of growth and unfolding, creating a spiral. There is a paradox in the spiral form. Is the movement from the centre out, or from the outside in? In Hindu mythology, I get a croak mid-morning for some reason. Right. In Hindu mythology, when Brahma breathes out, there is manifestation. When he breathes in, dissolution takes place. So that's the dissolution, the spiral's going inwards. With the exhalation, the spirit involves and winds into matter. With the inhalation, matter evolves, which is what's happening at the moment, and unwinds into spirit. So a gradual involution and differentiation of spirit into matter, and the evolution of matter, and gradual return to the one. In terms of the spiral, it seems as though we return along the same path on which we came, but we never come back to the same point in time. There's two ways of looking at it, isn't there? We can talk about going along involution and then we turn round and come back again. Or the other way of looking at it is that we just keep on back, or this shape. So involution, then we go back to the source. We know that spiral images are repeated throughout nature, from the succession of universes, the development of the races, and through the different kingdoms, mineral, vegetable, animal and human. As life and form ascend the evolutionary scale, an increasingly vivid consciousness and an expanding richness of expression takes place. The outflowing energy of life-seeking, ever fuller self-expression. The life-seeking, not life-seeking. It seems that each successive kingdom, to some extent, overlaps and is dependent on the others. And this is reminiscent of the great chain of being, which was a 17th to 18th century view of the universe as a series of graded links, from the lowest form of creation to the highest supreme being. Man was seen as the link between the animal kingdom and the heavenly beings. And Alexander Pope wrote in his poem, Essay on Man, "Know then thou thyself, presume not God to scan. The proper study of mankind is man, placed on this isthmus of a middle state, in doubt to deem himself a god or beast." I actually did study this poetry some years back, so it's nice to come back to it. James Thomson saw the chain of being in evolutionary terms, in moral, intellectual and spiritual evolution. He wrote, "Up from unfeeling mould to seraphs burning round the Almighty's throne, life rising still on life in higher tone, perfection forms, and with perfection, bliss." In terms of our spiritual and spiral evolution, it seems that we move ever inward to the centre, at the same time gradually expanding our awareness of consciousness outwards on our ongoing pilgrimage, the path of the hero. Before considering any more ideas about paths, what about the goal? One writer, this is really interesting, one writer suggests that there must be a goal for man. Otherwise, how could we think of it? I thought that was really an interesting thought. How can we think of it if there isn't one? To have a goal implies that one has at least had some vision or experience of that goal. And indeed, how do we know if it is a good state to aim for? Yes, there's plenty written about others' ideas, but perhaps we have some of our own. It seems to be the statement of every great spiritual teacher of mankind that our goal is to reach a state of perpetual harmony with the eternal, God or bliss. This is sometimes called liberation or union with life or truth. This seems to be inevitable for mankind, as we will all eventually return to the one. It could therefore be said that the only goal is the development or unfoldment of each of us. Until we reach a definite vision of the purpose and goal of life, we wander along many bypaths and down blind alleyways. Necessary experiences though they might be, we must acquire mastery of our mind, emotions and actions. I've taken a description of the basic path we take from the writings of Theosophist Jacob Bongren. He says, from the noumenal subjective realm into the objective world of phenomena, with its pairs of opposites, runs a road on which young, inexperienced individuals go forth from eternal and real unity into temporary, apparent separateness, turn around and return to their source, grown up and experienced. The one is the path of outgoing or pursuit. Individuals pursue the pleasures of the vehicles which were formed for them on the lower planes. They are selfishly desiring one unreality after another, blinded by the heresy of separateness. Hence they are mean, unkind, obstructive thoughts, words and deeds, which bring out selfishness, sin, dissatisfaction, suffering and disaster. I read in Annie Besant's one time that she suggested that sin is when you know something is wrong to do or say or think, but you still do it. That was her idea of what sin is. These force them to turn around and seek the path of return. And this is a slow, gradual process. There is a learning to discriminate between the permanent and the fleeting. So that's Mr. Bongren's sort of all our what we do in a nutshell. Another way of describing this is to say that the seed of the one, the monad, the unit of life in man, is pure, with all its powers in a state of latency. The monad journeyed from its source and became embedded in denser and denser matter. It became more and more limited until it reached the mineral kingdom. It then started its return journey. Deeply embedded in matter, the consciousness only stirs faintly. It moves on to dreaming and stirs to awakening. And finally, endowed with self-consciousness, it arises to the stature of man when it begins to know that it is an individual. Later there comes a turning point in the individual's life when all the physical, emotional and mental influences do not satisfy, and there is an inward yearning for something of lasting value. And here begins the movement from a stage of becoming to one of being. It is a spiritual, alchemical process when the fire of one's inner being burns away the dross that shuts out the pure light of wisdom. The cobwebs of the mind are dusted away. Now, the house where Artem and I live has very high ceilings, like 11'6", I think. And we get cobwebs around the top of the walls, sometimes giving a sort of Miss Havisham of Great Expectations effect. Well, the one in the film, anyway. Actually, someone has given me recently a long-handled microfiber duster, which is brilliant. I'm tall, round, and all the cobwebs come off, and they haven't returned yet either. But I wondered what the equivalent of that would be for clearing the cobwebs of my mind. I noticed in the dictionary that one definition of cobweb is anything that obscures. So that's why it's a cobwebs in the mind. Everything gets obscured. When first woven, though, it occurred to me that spiders' webs are exquisite, beautiful, and sometimes you actually can watch one building its web. And even the spiders in our house make a neat lacy pattern along the corners. It's very neat, equidistant. So the thoughts in our mind can be inspired ones, beautiful ones, as well as the humdrum, not so nice ones. And eventually cobwebs collapse, and they look a mess, don't they? They need clearing away. So tangled up thoughts from the past can affect our present thoughts. It looks as though the long-handled cleaner is probably meditation, no newfangled mental gadget. HPB left us some lines of guidance called the Golden Stairs, which begin a clean life, an open mind. Joy Mills writes, just as we bathe the physical body each day, so in the clean life we may learn to bathe the emotional and mental vehicles and put on the clean apparel of right feelings and thoughts. Meditation and study provide, in effect, emotional and mental baths required for the clean life. They are the long-handled duster. A clean mind is an orderly mind, that is, not in a state of confusion nor polluted by extraneous ideas, opinions or beliefs. And this is what we need to achieve if we are to travel the path successfully. And the Golden Stairs are a brilliant route map. Although the path is one in all fundamentals, the details do vary in individual cases, according to the temperament, education and cultural background of the person concerned. So in a secondary sense, we may talk of different paths. So let us consider a few ideas, and there's so many. Firstly, Felix Leighton, he goes back quite a while in society, with a suggestion about the preliminary path. I always vow that I won't use words that I can't say very well. This path is described as one of battle, when the lower nature is struggling unsuccessfully to attain happiness for itself. And the only way to win this battle is to completely surrender to the higher self. Then the period of storm ends in a wondrous inner calm, in which the flower of the soul opens and the pilgrim becomes aware of the divine life at the heart of his own being. This sounds wonderful, and I wish it were that simple, but it's a bit like a story with a beginning and an end and no muddle. The muddle, no doubt, a lot of hard work. However, Felix does give a lovely analogy, and a lot of you will have experienced this, of an aeroplane that takes off on an overcast day, and it soon enters cloud, and the passenger then sees neither land nor sky, but feels the plane shuddering and reeling as it pushes its way through apparent chaos. Then suddenly it breaks through the cloud ceiling into bright sunshine, brilliant blue sky. The passenger now has a clear view in all directions and enters a zone of calm and peace. As the saying goes these days, what's not to like? Next, the way of non-identification. A path made up of a series of liberations with various kinds of bondage arriving from false identifications of the self with instincts, impulses, passions, with moods and emotions, with one's own pet theories, prejudices and fixed ideas. All these have to gradually be controlled, purified and eventually transmuted, as the changing of a base metal into gold or silver. And as we all know, we have to be alchemists. And then, the way of art. There is art, painting, architecture, sculpture, music, drama, dance, writing, etc., which is entertaining. Art which shows technical brilliance. But there is also art which shows an intuitional insight into realities of the spiritual world. So we have Faust and Chartres Cathedral, Raphael's Madonna, William Blake's Prince and Poetry, the Beethoven Symphony, you'll all have your favourites. Monteverdi's Vespers, which was on the proms last week. I once sang in that, you know. Oh, it was the most amazing, wonderful experience of my life. It was one of those ambitions that I knew I would never achieve. And I achieved it. It was amazing. It is actually, it might still be on the BBC website thing if you want to listen. It is actually quite subjective, really, you know, just to what people like. And this is confession time. Many years ago, Artma and I were in the Louvre in Paris with our daughter. And we went to see Da Vinci's Mona Lisa. We all had the same experience. Oh, is that it? I was surprised at how small it was. In fact, our daughter was up last weekend and I mentioned this to her and she said, oh, it was small. And strangely, for all the hype, it did nothing at all to us. But somebody else would have got something amazing from it. Really strange. But it is not just art from the past which can be inspiring, which is only to be expected as we are evolving. So there's the sculpture of Theosophist John O'Rourke. If you got your last insight, there were some beautiful images there of his sculpture. In my choir, we've enjoyed singing music by several modern composers, such as Eric Whittaker, I think he's American, and Arvo Pärt, John Rutter's good, Howard Goodall, there's a lot of them. And we sang, I don't know if you've heard of Will Todd. He's a jazz musician and composer, and he wrote Mass in Bloom, and it's just amazing. I've sung that, it's lovely. At the Young Dancer of the Year competition, we really enjoyed it, Artma and I, especially the modern and the street dancing. There was such control and, oh, it's just fantastic. So there's a lot of amazing stuff about. The way of devotion comes next. On this path, the dynamic power of emotion is used in the spiritual life. Sometimes it's called bhakti yoga. And there is a conception of God as the divine beloved, with whom the loving soul of the devotee seeks to be united. In one form, God as love is conceived in impersonal terms. Examples are Bernard of Clairvaux and John of the Cross. And in the symbolism of the Sufis, where there are love songs are between the human lover and the divine beloved. Another form is focused on figures such as Krishna, who is seen as an avatar of Vishnu, second person in the Hindu Trinity. And Jesus Christ, who is also seen as an avatar and is a second aspect of the Christian Trinity. HPB describes an avatar as divine incarnation, the descent of a god or some exalted being who has progressed beyond the necessity of rebirth and the descent into the body of a simple mortal. The way of nature. For the nature mystic, the path is through experiences of the world of nature. You don't need to be a mystic either, just go in your local wood and in our local wood it's quiet. But then you get the birds singing. Well, you must know the feeling. It's lovely. Wordsworth describes how in his early days the beauties around him produced an almost intoxicating effect. And these words are taken from lines composed a few miles above Tintern Abbey. For I have learned to look on nature not as in the hour of thoughtless youth, but hearing oftentimes the still, sad music of humanity, nor harsh nor grating, though of ample power to chasten and subdue. And I have felt a presence that disturbs me with the joy of elevated thoughts, a sense sublime of something far more deeply interfused, whose dwelling is the light of setting suns, and the round ocean, and the living air, and the blue sky, and in the mind of man, a motion and a spirit that impels all thinking things, all objects of all thought, and rolls through all things. Therefore am I still a lover of the meadows and the woods and mountains, and of all the mighty world of eye and ear, both what they half create and what perceive, well pleased to recognise in nature and the language of the sense the anchor of my purest thoughts, the nurse, the guide, the guardian of my heart and soul, of all my moral being. Later came the feeling that all these external beauties are only the outward form of some greater and vaster life, the soul of which they are but the body. Eventually, Wordsworth realised that this hidden life or soul of nature is the one cosmic life which rolls through all things, and that his own inmost self is one with that same cosmic life. At this he too reaches the mystic union. Wordsworth was as close to nature as any poet. His animal love of nature turned into love, a love which was mystical and spiritual. Now for the way of disinterested service, which I thought sounded a bit strange at first. This is a path that can be followed by anyone, whatever their temperament or circumstances. It demands no sudden and spectacular break with ordinary life, no withdrawal to forest, desert or cave. This person continues to act very much as before, but with different motives. The person of the world is interested in worldly success, wealth and reputation, but these cannot bring real happiness. The solution is to work as eagerly as before, but now desiring only the welfare of the world in a disinterested way. That does not mean uninterested, but working without any thought for the self. So that's where the disinterested comes in, yourself. These paths and others should not be seen as parallel tracks along a level road, but as different paths, as it were, up a mountainside. The higher they ascend, the closer they become, till at last they all meet near or at the summit. I'm just going to add something here that I wanted to add in the bit about the goal, but I'd sort of forgotten how I was going to put it. So it's not quite the same, but it is about going from Mount Weller hill, a steep hill. When I was very young, the 4 children in the family, my mother took us all the way to Ingleborough in in the Yorkshire Dales. And it's not quite a mountain, but it's very high. And she took us all up the side, past Gaping Gill, to the top. Right. Several years later, well, as a late teenager maybe, I went up with some friends, but we went the front way up. So you're climbing, we're nearly there. Oh goodness, we're not there at all. That's where it is, up there. So you go up the next bit. Oh, it's a long way up. Oh, my poor hips. Even as a teenager, oh, my poor hip. We're there. No. There was another one. It goes up like that. So eventually we got to the top, So I think that's a bit how the goals are. We have several goals, I think, on our path. HPB, in The Voice of the Silence, tells us of 2 paths, which I'm sure most of you know of, one of which we might be taking. The doctrine of the I she equates with head learning, and this is for the crowd. Jesus spoke to the masses in parables that they might better understand. This path round the mountain is the steady, natural path of progress through moral effort and the practice of the virtues. The doctrine of the heart is for the elect. Jesus taught his disciples about the keys to the mysteries, about soul wisdom, and this road is the precipitous path of occultism through a series of initiations, perhaps their initiations. We are advised to remain content with the eye or open path if we find the secret heart path too high-winged for us. That's what HPB said. We can always try it in another life. The 2 paths both have the same end, a glorified immortality. So it's the same end. You just somehow choose which way you want to take. Jeffrey Hodson suggests that the ideal is a balance of both, and I'm all for balance. The Buddha suggested treading the middle way. The deep experience of life, of happiness and sorrow in past and present incarnation enable an aspirant to achieve this balance. Self-realization cannot come about by some miracle. Each has to work on themselves so that there is change within. The paths are many, and yet it seems there is only one path, with a big P. Christmas Humphreys calls the little paths approaches, means to an end, which is the beginning of the one path. And all the steps are within oneself, hence we become the path itself. John Mills wrote, "It seems from all the various sacred scriptures and theosophical literature that there is a path or way which when walked will be transformative. But we are also advised that it is not so much the walking of the path, but the becoming it. The path is a way of life, how we think, feel, act in the world in accordance with our true nature. Maybe becoming the path is the same as walking the talk. We need to practice or put into practice the ideas that we talk about, or all our talking has little meaning." So we have to remember that when we go home from summer school, because we'll have heard so much. A theosophist with the wonderful name Ether Snodgrass Cook wrote in 1947, bless her, "We have dedicated ourselves to the law of brotherhood by giving allegiance to the society which proclaims it. The principle of brotherhood must either become increasingly potent in daily moment by moment experience or fade into insignificance." Now, how about something amazing? Are you ready? Very simple. All eternity, numberless manvantaras and cycles of one's existence, all the joys and sorrow, learning and forgetting, the totality of one's being, have led to this moment. When I read that, I couldn't believe it. It was like seeing the Grand Canyon for the first time. You sort of, wow, that is such a thought, isn't it? But furthermore, before furthermore, here is one of my favourite quotes from Joseph Campbell, one of my favourite people, regarding the hero's path. It says, furthermore, we have not even to risk the adventure alone, for the heroes of all time have gone before us. The labyrinth is thoroughly known. We have only to follow the thread of the hero path, and where we had thought to find an abomination in the middle of the labyrinth, we shall find a god. And where we had thought to slay another, we shall slay ourselves. And where we had thought to travel outward, we will come to the centre of our own existence. And where we thought to be alone, we will be with the whole world. Now to end and to explain, if you don't know, where the title of the talk came from. This is from a very short poem by Ella Wheeler Wilcox, who was very much into Theosophy. So many gods, so many creeds, so many paths that wind and wind, while just the act of being kind is all the sad world needs. Thank you.